This is your regular broadcast. Don't be afraid. This is the new, I'm not going to say improved, Holocron Chronicles on the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. I am Charlie Carden. I am your new, recently promoted host of this wonderful program. Star Wars fan since 1980. And I am joined by a gentleman flying in his X-Wing far, far across the stars, who has been a regular on this program in the past. Part of the SFU network, recently promoted to the third chair. But the second chair of this show, Peter Stein, the Jedi Knight, is flying along with me. Peter, good afternoon.
Hello.
All right. Well, we're going to keep things rolling in the tradition of SFU. This format, it was funny. I was just telling April before I got on, I said, I don't need to reinvent the wheel with this. Mark did it a certain way. That was his vibe. I liked it. But, you know, we do Code 47 together, and that's kind of the vibe that we have. But we're gonna evolve, and we're certainly interested always in feedback from people who listen. So if you're like, that's corny, drop it. I mean, try something else. I think I'd be totally open to it. But for now, we're going to at least try to get the ball rolling. We got a good show for you. We're tackling something different. We said, you know, if this is going to be a reboot of this show, we're going to maybe start at the start. We're going to look at George Lucas, the man who is responsible for everything that we talk about in one form or the other. Where did he get his start? What was his first big idea that he put to professional film? And we're going to talk about that movie and everything it represents here in a moment. But we also have some news as we're recording this in late July of 2025. San Diego Comic-Con 2025 is going on. And there was definitely some Star Wars news and merch to discuss. So we're going to get on and do that. But just like on every Secret Friends Unite program, we kick it off by talking about our Secret Friends Unite Patreon Super Squad. These are the people that get exclusive programs. They get this show for free. Like, for example, when we record on a weekend, the Patreon people get it on a weekend where everybody else gets it on a Wednesday. Man, that's the most advanced recording we have. So I'm pretty geeked about that. If you like what you hear, that in addition to ad-free programs, great standalone Discord channel for people who are Patreons. You can try us out for a week for free. So that's 7 days. Your first month is 50% off. You can stick around for as little as $2 a month. Tons of entertainment. You're losing money if you don't do it. I mean, I should say it's a reverse math proposition. I don't know. Maybe that's some Star Wars math. I have no idea. But at any rate, these folks are on board with us. My buddy Derek, who we call the Figure Dude. Francie, who does my wife's hair. My wife is off to get her hair done today. So I know Francie is a big fan of our bad trip to the movies with the Cardens. Francie, great news. New episode coming out in August. I don't know that we picked the movie yet, but we've got a great list of bad movies. Luke Lore, Mr. Xbox Expansion Pass, and my Uncle Tim down there in South Haven, Michigan. Very happy to have you on board. Also, John Sedorf, Brendan Myers, Corey in HD, Matthew Keel, my buddy Kurt Krug, who's not a fan of Star Wars Disney. Tried to get him to watch Andor. I couldn't get him over the hump. He's an old school fella, but who knows, maybe someday. Maybe we can get him listening to the show and who knows what. Tanya Lee, Chipotle Bear, Famous Seamus, Jay Newport, 007, Cam the Movie Man, Brian Osterman, a.k.a. Darth Prozac, and Mr. Freight Conductor, our thusly named droid man from the previous episode. Always, last but certainly not least, first in our hearts would be the tremendous Nias family from out there in the Twin Cities, Sean, Stella, and Henry. Very grateful for everything you do. If you're interested in having a look, again, no obligation to look at it for 7 days for free, patreon.com/Secret Friends Unite. Get on board. All right. Well, we have. I like that this is our first show, and we actually have some news to talk about. So you can thank San Diego Comic-Con for that. So Peter, the first bit of news is just an image. What do we got?
All right. So we had an image drop at San Diego Comic-Con of the new Darth Maul series. I think it's Darth Maul, Lord of Shadow Lord. I'm sorry, I can read.
Let's go. Let's go to the mall.
Yeah, Maul, Shadow Lord. So it's a quick image of Darth Maul standing in front of some machinery with, it looks like some sort of reactor behind him, and he's just looking generally angry with his lightsaber. You know, classic Maul pose.
He's got
So
it. That's his
we
free
don't
bird right
know.
there. No doubt about it.
Yeah, we don't know a whole lot about this show other than it's going to be set, obviously, between episode 3 and his appearance in Rebels, um, and that it's dealing with likely the rise of Crimson Dawn and how Maul is trying to figure out how he fits into this new galaxy with the Empire on the rise.
Right.
Interestingly, we see that the animation style is basically the same as Clone Wars, so we're not shifting back to the Rebel style. We're remaining pretty solidly in the Clone Wars animation style, which I think is probably a good choice because I think everybody prefers that style over
Definitely.
the other.
Yeah, I would say
Not that there's anything wrong with the Rebel style. It's just that there's some je ne sais quoi about this one, I suppose.
Your quas are genocide. I would say again, and I think when this news dropped, I kind of mumbled or grumbled about it, like, why can't we get out of the Clone Wars? Like Todd, for example, our third host, is not a fan of the Clone Wars era. And you know what? Part of me totally gets it. I would love to see Star Wars have more of a shift on telling later stories. And we are. We're in the Mando era. We're taking a big jump forward in 2027 with the Starfighter film, the feature film we're going to see. But there are people who love these characters. So much like and it's now on our first episode, 6 minutes and 30 seconds, talking about Star Trek, much like with Star Trek, there are different flavors for different people's taste. So there are purists like us. There are new fans who are going to enjoy programs like Discovery, Lower Decks, which was an animated program, had a lot of different appeal. So I get this. And again, we're going to watch everything anyway. And there's always going to be bits and pieces, I think, that'll be fun and enjoyable. My preference is to see more of that kind of newer content going into a different era. If you take a big jump forward or take an even bigger jump back, although we did try that with the Acolyte and it maybe didn't have the greatest results, but that doesn't mean that you throw out the baby with the bathwater. You know what I mean?
I think they just picked the wrong time for something like that and the wrong subject matter, because there is a huge amount of desire for Old Republic, High Republic stuff. It's just, you got to pick the right spot.
Right. Absolutely correct. So we did not end up getting a date for this. Star Wars Maul Shadow Lord, the formal name. But one would simply expect this for a 2026 release. And I'm trying to remember, Bad Batch, I feel like it was kind of a first half of the year kind of deal. Maybe we got it like February. So if I was to, roll the dice on this one, pull out my Sabbath cards, as it were, I might bet that this could be Q1, Q2 release.
Yeah, so. It's Q1 or May 4th would be my guess.
Yeah, unless they decided to obviously have another Tales of the Wawa. But they keep those under the radar, which I think is great. It's great to have some surprises, especially in this internet age.
Surprise people.
Yeah.
Especially if they're kind of short. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right. In this internet age where, it's like, oh, well, they announced this thing that'll be on in 10 years. Who cares? It's going to get tossed out. So, by the way, all of our news, much like over on Code, where we pull from trekmovie.com, these come from StarWarsNewsNet.com. I like to have just one spot. There should be potentially a link in the show notes if you want to go have a look at their stories. But with San Diego Comic-Con, as I said, we also are on Merch Watch. So we've got some new merchandise to talk about. I'm a big fan of the helmets. You see a few of them in the background here. I'm at a weird angle, but I was really trying to highlight my new Galactus, which means Darth Vader's kind of behind him, in my Phase 1 clone, which is wearing the Lucky Charms hat that I got at a food show last year, is kind of in the corner. But always Luke is right there, because the Luke X-Wing helmet will always be my favorite. But yeah, we've got some new ones. Problem with these is that if you see the cubbies behind me, if you're watching us on YouTube or on Patreon, they're kind of too short to fit a helmet in. So I'm stuck with just this spot, though, to be honest with you, with directly behind me, I could probably clear it out, put some helmets there. But I'm doing kind of a reorg of the figures. It's kind of my afternoon project. I'm going to do some swap around. So probably in episodes not in the too distant future, I'll flip the desk around so you can appreciate my work. But
maybe one of our episodes we can get a tour of all of the collections, all the figures, because there's a bunch.
I have wanted to do that for a long time, to do a TikTok video or an Instagram where I'm just kind of walking around and doing that. So that's thanks for planting the seed. All right, well, back to the subject at hand. We've got some different stuff, including a Death Trooper electronic helmet from Rogue One, from Andor. Did we see some of those? We didn't see any of those in Mando, did we? Did Moff Gideon have some of those?
Moff Gideon, I think, had 2 of them.
Okay, gotcha. So yeah, that's spanning across several series. We also got a new lightsaber, and again, people who are real lightsaber purists, and we've had a lot of them on this show because Mark was definitely friends with a lot of those folks, don't necessarily dig on the concept of what Hasbro puts out. I myself have from Savi's Workshop at Disney. I have that saber, and then there are a myriad of companies that make different types of sabers.
So many people that make lightsabers.
Right. But I like this one. These now have, and this was not the case when I bought my hero saber back in the day. I have my Rey/Luke/Anakin hero design, which is my preference. Did not have a detachable blade. These do, much like the Disney ones do.
Kind of like my Luke Skywalker one doesn't.
Right. Where you can latch on. So that is going to be available pre-ordered for those who are up to about $250. I think they were $150 back when they started, but inflation is a bitch. This next one is an item I am considering. This is I love dioramas, which you can't necessarily see as if you follow my right hand, which I'm waving. This is a portion of my Star Wars shelf here. The very bottom shelf is, I'm going to give it a little tilt here with the camera. That didn't help, is I like dioramas. So it's like, for example, I have Luke Snowspeeder, which is right there. That's which was a Black Series release many years back. And then I have it kind of interspersed with, the Wampa. I have Luke standing on the mound with my only sequel trilogy figure is Rey, handing him the lightsaber, because sequel trilogy, we needed the merchandising for that kind of fell flat, and I don't really have any of those figures. But this is a cool diorama of Anakin and Obi-Wan from the climactic third act of episode 3, fighting on Mustafar, standing on top of the lava skimmer, and comes also. So they're in fighting motion. Looks like there's some clashing effects, if that's really part of it. Like you can stick the sabers together with clashing effect. That would be awesome. Yeah, and the little bot that's swimming around him. You have not a diorama, but it looks like I'm not sure if this is this is a 2-pack. Yeah, of the middle act fighting scene of Sidious and Mace Windu, also from episode 3. Looks like a reissue of Jango Fett. Not super exciting. We have Asajj Ventress from Bad Batch, I believe, is unless did she appear in a
that's Ventress from season 7
or
season 6, right? But when she appears on Coruscant,
gotcha.
She's got the helmet.
Very good. Like a dog with a bone, Hasbro's not letting go of the Acolyte because they have produced a figure of the Stranger, who is the villain. I understand that those figures, I stumbled upon one of those figures in Walmart yesterday, and it was half off, and I think they just came out. So, but it's months and months of production, so I understand. Got to try. This is a definitely purchase for me. This is a diorama of the, again, third act climactic fight between Vader and Luke in The Empire Strikes Back, which is my favorite film, right over my left shoulder, of them standing on the Cloud City gantry fighting. So absolutely spectacular. I have a recreation of that, less the gantry, and I'll just put those figures back in my store and I'll sell them. But I definitely want to have this because I think it looks pretty great. And again, the pricing on these sucks, but you know what? It's there are no cheap hobbies anymore. 2-pack of Anakin and Rex. This looks like it might be from Ahsoka-ish, or kind of iffy.
The Anakin figure I think is new, but the Rex is a reissue. Looks like
right.
I have that one over.
Gotcha. They get into their Halloween edition. They have a Night Trooper, which is less said about those the better. I think that's just such a dumb gimmick. They also, but they do have it with the Dathomir Witch, like the Wicked Witch from Wizard Oz. And you know what? I'll probably pick that one up for April. April likes switchy stuff.
It's a green Ventress.
It's a green Ventress. Yeah, exactly. They have a glow-in-the-dark Royal Imperial Guard Halloween edition. Not bad. Downshifting to a show that we love very much would be Skeleton Crew. We have Smee SM33. Nice figure that I think that was previously announced. Barriss Offee is another figure that I think might be new. Maybe.
This is there might be a release of her, but I think might be the first one.
Gotcha. They have the Ronin, which is from Star Wars Vision. Not a big Star Wars Vision's not a big interest of mine, but for people who dig it, here's one I'm definitely going to be purchasing. 2 of the Jedi Temple Guard. Big fan of this character. I love the yellow lightsaber. My lightsaber has a yellow design, so I'm totally psyched for that. Aaliyah Sakura. I'm pretty sure this is a reissue, maybe a new sculpt. Not 100% sure. Magna Guard. So you need 2 of these to hang out with your Dooku. The 5,000th release of A New Hope Han Solo is another choice. And Chewbacca. I don't think they come in a two-bag. Then we get into the vintage collection, which Derek, who is one of our Patreons, is a very big fan of. I'm always on the hunt of deals like that for him. The Jedi Spirits 3-pack. I have the vintage collection part of this, and it comes with a swap out head, so you can either have Hayden Christensen or Sebastian Shaw. That is interesting to me.
The 3 Jedi spirits at the end of Jedi.
Exactly. It says this can only be bought at Hasbro Comic-Con booths for $49.99. Comes with I thought it was saying it was coming with the DVD. I'm like, if it's coming with a non-special edition DVD, everybody's going to want this, but it's not. Since it's saying it can be bought at cons, I would imagine it would probably end up on Hasbro Pulse as well. The new HasLab, and again, I'm out of the HasLab game. I've done 4 of them over the years. None of them have been Star Wars. They've all been G.I. Joe. Sorry. But they are doing the LAAT/I gunship, which we saw in again, I keep using the word Climactic Third Act. That's going to be the name of this episode. The Climactic Third Act. I'll change it in a minute here. But yeah, it's the gunship, which we saw in the Climactic Third Act of episode 2, when the clones reveal themselves in the big old battle on Geonosis. It looks very detailed, but yeah, HasLabs are a weird deal, man. They're not cheap. This is $450, which I believe that was the cost of the Ghost from Rebels, which was one of the more recent ones. I know Derek picked that one up. I don't know that if he's received it. I'd love to see it, but everything with these big vehicles becomes an issue of storage space. Where the hell does it go?
I have nowhere to put it. I love this vehicle. I would get it in a heartbeat, but I've got nowhere to put it.
Exactly. Rounding out, we have what I'm assuming is a reissue of the Imperial Shock Trooper from the prequels, another freaking Han Solo from A New Hope, and Chewbacca. Oh, bingo bango. Issue of Crosshair. I don't know if this is the first one of the vintage, but I know I have one for Black Series. Ben Kenobi from episode 4, a release of Vader's Advanced Tie in that scale. And the Cantina Adventure 4-pack is a kind of a timely release because one of the previous HasLabs was the Cantina set. So this would go very nicely with that if you did purchase that. So Bantha and Tusken Raider release looks pretty cool. There's a 4-pack of Snow Troopers to wind things out. So those are, it's funny. I kick myself for getting into the Black Series instead of getting into the vintage collection, but we're turning the Wayback Machine back about 12 years, and I can't undo those 12 years. I can't take what I have here, try to sell it all, and then try to get into the last 15 years of these. It's just, the time has passed me by. So let me take a moment to change the title of the episode. And Peter, why don't you tell us about what else we got?
All right. So also at San Diego Comic-Con, we learned a lot about what Lucasfilm Publishing is doing, where we're getting a bunch of comics and books. So we're getting some comics about the Young Jedi Adventures, so that the animated kids show. So we're getting some training sessions about that. We are getting some, I guess, spooky stories, tales from the Nightlands.
Nice.
So I'm not. I haven't really followed that, so I'm not 100% sure what that's about. Other than we're doing spooky Star Wars stuff.
Right.
Cool. We're also getting it looks like we're getting another General Grievous comic. Which
nice.
It's going to be pretty interesting. And then we're getting a continuation of the Legacy of Vader. And Luke Skywalker is going to make an appearance.
Oh, very interesting. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the Vader has been, and we've covered one on a previous episode, has been a stalwart of the Marvel series, the Marvel imprint of Star Wars.
This is Kylo Ren. So this is Kylo Ren following the legacy of Vader.
Oh,
so
yeah.
We're going to see an appearance of Luke, and then is Kylo Ren dealing with Force ghosts or something? We don't know.
Right.
A lot of detail on that.
Right. Yeah, an ongoing series. Yeah, because I know that started fairly recently. So, also looks like we're getting a nice visual guide for the Mandalorian by series writing regular Pablo Hidalgo. Love his stuff.
Yeah, we're getting a re-release of the novelization of Revenge of the Sith, but it's a deluxe version. So that'll be pretty cool. I remember that the novelization of episode 3 was actually pretty solid.
I own it or did and read it, and I remembered that I thought there were a lot of really cool details in there too, like the Rancor hide boots that Dooku War. I'm like, that's a fun detail. And I don't know how he got those. He probably whacked it himself. This is kind of nuts. Well, cool. Good deal.
Yeah. We're also getting a book about Star Wars Outlaws, a prequel, a prequel, as it were, that tells the story of Jalen Vrax and ND5, so two of the characters that you meet in the game. So it's going to tell how they got together as a criminal underworld duo. I haven't beaten the game yet, so I've met these characters. I don't have a whole lot of investment. I'll probably read it at some point after I know what the heck's going on.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it looks interesting.
That would help. Gotcha. Awesome. And then wrapping things up, we have a comic miniseries. Again, we're still talking about. This is actually through Dark Horse, which they kind of share publishing rights for the comics. That's good. That's smart for Disney to farm that out because you get different stories for different levels. But the Bad Batch, Clone Force 99, making their return for I feel like the first time since we had the wrap of the show last year. In Ghost Agents from Dark Horse, and looks like this is coming a 4-issue miniseries from it's some creators I'm not familiar with: Michael Morrissey, Reese Hannigan on pencils, and Elisabetta D'Amico doing the inking. And of course, variant covers, because there would be not so much description. When a separatist scientist and his dangerous invention go missing during the Clone Wars, Clone Force 99 is sent to track him down and prevent the device from falling into the wrong hands. But when Hunter, Wrecker, Crosshair, and Tech arrive at the scientist's abandoned laboratory, they quickly realize they aren't the only ones on his trail, and this mission will be different than any they've ever faced before. How about that? Different all the time. We're getting this, 4-issue arc, which starts in late December, and then obviously running into 2026. So I love it. Peter, I know that we had talked about getting you hooked up with Marvel Unlimited, because we're planning to talk about some of the a lot of comics. So, I know that you said you've not really gotten over the hump of getting into comics in general. But would you have interest, being that we love this? Would you have interest in reading something like this?
Oh yeah, Bad Batch was one of my favorites. I quite enjoyed all the characters.
Yeah,
I'd like to see how they would tell further stories, especially with my guy Tech, who they offed.
Right. So, well, this one at least is prequel to the series.
This is during the war. So
they're all together kicking that. So that's good stuff. Well, cool. Well, that's what we got from San Diego Comic-Con. And again, we're recording on a Sunday. San Diego's wrapping up, so that's probably about all the news that you're going to get. And much like over on Code 47, we do have news when news pops up, but there's not always worthwhile news to talk about. So sometimes segment 1 will kind of be a ghost. I guess I actually call it segment half sometimes over on the other show. So which makes us a 1-segment show, because our main focus is going to be our kind of topic of conversation, which this time around is going to be starting from the start. So without going into the long belabored history of George Lucas and who he was and his background and everything, which will actually be covered in our next episode, a little bit more fleshed out. Peter jumped ahead, watched our next movie first, because he had a friend who wanted to watch it, so they watched it. It's a movie I'm very familiar with. I won't drop the name, but I'm sure it's easy to figure out if it's a movie about George Lucas that he made that was somewhat autobiographical. It's not hard to figure out what it is. But this film is not. This was the film that he hatched while he was a film student. And I believe, I'm bad for not having it up, but probably, I think he was a film student at USC, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. I mean, he's a Northern California. Yeah, he's a Northern California guy, so it was right around that way. But the project is called THX-1138, was made into a film in 1971. And the breakdown goes like this. Again, 1971, it's an American social science fiction film. Now, that is an expression I wouldn't say I was terribly familiar with, but I am familiar with the genre. I suppose it hasn't potentially been described like that, but in some ways you can kind of paint Star Trek with that brush, particularly TOS. It was so message driven, and it was so, we can't talk about Vietnam, but here's Vietnam happening on this planet. You know what I mean? Or we don't really want to talk about the Nazis, but here's the Nazis literally happening on this planet, or the Chicago mobs, or this thing or that thing. Exactly. So we don't want to talk about the Russians, but we call them the Klingons. You know what I mean? It's the Cold War. So anyway, the film was co-written and directed by George Lucas in his feature directorial debut, produced by Francis Ford Coppola, thus the American Zoetrope, which I saw when it came on screen. I'm like, oh, that's Coppola. Okay. Coppola is a very accomplished director who recently fell very flat on his face with a movie called Metropolis or something. Like, he produced his own movie and it was a total dud. Peter, are you familiar with this? Adam Driver was the star. Adam Driver was.
I remember seeing trailers for it, but it wasn't one of the. There's certain genres that I don't really get into.
Yeah.
And I forget the details, but whatever genre that was just wasn't my vibe.
I mean, I'm sure he would love to tell you it didn't really bend genres. I know, listening, a podcast that I really enjoy, that's not one of ours, is called The Weekly Planet. It's a couple of guys in Australia. They saw it, and they do basically a very satirical podcast, kind of like what Todd and I do, over on SFU. And they talked about this film, and I was like, even if they weren't just being silly about it, it sounds unwatchable. So sorry, Francis Ford Coppola. But anyway, it was actually co-written by Walter Murch, who I was definitely a collaborator of Lucas's in later walks. The film stars Robert Duvall and Donald Pleasance, who to me he's the James Bond's main nemesis, Blofeld, in the 1970s Roger Moore films. And actually, no, I think before that, I think maybe even going back to the Sean Connery days. I would have to double check. And then it had a ton of other people I've never heard of. Don Pedro Colley, Maggie McOmi, who is the female love interest, and Ian Wolfe in the supporting roles. It is very, very British, because you can tell he filmed it in just about all the same spots he shot Star Wars. The film was set in a dystopian future in which the citizens are controlled by android police and use mandatory drugs to suppress emotions and kill off their sex drive. They take reverse Viagra as basically. Well, that could be another name for the episode. I don't know if I want to put Viagra in the title of a thing. Reverse Viagra. I think that might be. I think we
might get us hit by the algorithm in a way that we don't want.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you know what? You can believe in your head and in your heart that it's called reverse Viagra. I'm not going to write the words down. But that's what it is to me. THX 113 was developed by Lucas, developed from Lucas's 1907 student film Electronic Labyrinth, THX 1138 4EB, which he created while attending USC School of Cinematic Arts. The feature film was a joint venture between Warner Brothers and American Zoetrope, Coppola. A novelization by Ben Bova was produced in 1971. The film received mixed reviews from critics and underperformed at the box office upon its initial release, but subsequently received critical acclaim and gained a cult following, which can be said of so many different movies. But it's, having, a cult following isn't a tribute to the fact that people really enjoy it, and it doesn't have to. So it doesn't have anything to do with what critics think, because critics are just people too. I know, because I've trained as a journalist and I've written many film reviews. I don't know if that makes me a qualified critic. I never had a piece of paper on my wall that said film critic.
It at least makes you an amateur critic. So.
It did. I was published in the State News back in the 90s when I was a student at Michigan State, many, many times. But yes, developed a cult following, particularly in the aftermath of Lucas's success with Star Wars in 1977. A director's cut was prepared by Lucas and released in 2004, and that's what I watched. Peter, watched. So we both watched, because this was a cheap pickup on Fandango. So it is available VOD. It is probably also available from your local library. Wouldn't surprise me if you're not a VOD. Got to have it on a disc kind of person. But let's get into it. I definitely took some notes. We get rolling with a clip, or what felt like a clip, from one of Lucas's primary inspirations in style and thought process, which is a clip from an old Buck Rogers serial. I was
very confused by that when it first started, because I had never seen this film before, so I didn't know if this was like some glitch in the system and why there was like a leftover piece of a Buck Rogers short.
And I'd be interested to know, was that always there? Did Lucas feel in 2004? It's funny, he did his director's cut of this, and there was another release of this. There was another update of the Star Wars films in '04, or maybe it was in '05, because I think
it was right after the prequels finished.
So, it would have been in '05. Okay, gotcha. So that's what he was doing with his time at that time, because he was done, directing and writing films at that time. He was kind of in quasi-retirement. It's funny. This has the credits at the end of the movie, so it's funny because that was a it turns out a requirement of the time. These actually played in reverse, which I'm sure was meant to continue to bend the reality of the entire concept of everything. But what's interesting is that if you watch the I think the Empire of Dreams, the huge doco that was done right around the same time about Lucas, which I really think you and I should break down at some point, because I've watched it several times. I think it's fascinating. But he did that for Star Wars, because he does the Star Wars films always with the opening crawl. The Writers Guild zapped him for it and said, "Don't do it again." He did it again in Empire, and he got billed $250,000, and he quit the guild. And in quitting the guild, that meant that he couldn't hire Spielberg to direct Return of the Jedi, and it was a whole thing. It was a whole thing, as I said in my notes. That's interesting that he was playing with the rules this early on, but then he was also working with Coppola, so he wasn't quite the loose unit that he became, but he was on his way, because one of the biggest things, and again, I've got notes bit by bit, but voiceover and then like people talking over radios, because a lot of it is like, first of all, everybody kind of roughly wears the same outfit, white jumpsuit, shaved head, women too. But I do notice that Lucas I was telling a buddy about myself this morning. Lucas has an obsession with buttons lighting up, because that's one of the first, like, control room dark, close up, or a little bit more of a longer shot of a control panel and lights going beep, bop, beep, boop, like on, off, on.
Yeah, and especially if you watch the original Star Wars, there's a lot of light up buttons, especially on the Death Star.
That's exactly what I was going. Yeah, so that's all beep, bop, boop, and then pull a lever and a guy waves his hand. So I guess that's clearly a thing for him. But in the apartment of these, first of all, they're all workers. It reminds me of Workforce, which was an episode of Star Trek Voyager, where everybody's just a happy worker and they don't really know any different. But Robert Duvall is in the apartment he has, and when you open the medicine cabinet, it starts telling you how many pills you're supposed to take or whatever it is. And that's not even including what we get to later, which is the therapy booth, which is just a picture of Genghis Khan telling you that you're or look like Genghis Khan.
Genghis Khan. It looked to me like it was a really old icon of Jesus that they had like just chopped the face.
You think so? But he discovered it later.
It looked to me like it was supposed to be some sort of confessional booth where you could like unburden yourself.
But then the other side of the recording just told you how good you were, and you're a loyal believer of the state, and blah blah blah.
Buy things, consume. Yeah,
exactly.
And then it cuts to later. There's a lizard sitting on the circuit breakers. So like. That was kind of funny to me.
That could be another name of the episode. There's a lizard sitting on the circuit breakers. It's so weird. So Robert Duvall is our main character. His job in the great work, which kind of reminds me of the great work was in Skeleton Key. That's what everybody on this planet was working on. Mm-hmm. His job is he runs a little diodes putting together these robot cops or cop bots, which are another Star Trek reference, which I quite certainly feel like they stole from this. Remember that episode? Yeah, that episode Prototype with the Prelar units or whatever it is, and Voyager gets caught up in dealing with it's robots who
I mean, even the face,
right? They're just not wearing the outfits and the helmets.
Yeah,
so it was
just not wearing the biker helmets and the leather jackets. Other than that, it's the same thing.
Yeah, I wrote. He's looking for guidance. He's sitting in the therapy/cult booth. You are one of the blessed. Blah blah blah. Increase product and be happy. I was like, holy shit.
That's why it felt like a confessional booth to me. Yeah. There was something like it felt very like, obviously it was very rote because it was supposed to be, right? It's a recording.
Right.
But there's a lot of like,
it doesn't say,
how are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. I understand. Yes. Okay. Could you be more specific? And I was like,
it doesn't really matter if you are. It's a recording. Or it's an algorithm which then tells you. I wrote, holy shit, there's boobies. This because Duvall is sitting watching a naked dancer, and it's very reminiscent of what we get in the holiday special. And I'm like, I'm sure Lucas,
what I was thinking.
I'm sure Lucas had nothing to do with that, even though he says I didn't have anything to do with the holiday special. I think very much he had something to do with this. And Duvall has a masturbatory machine. You don't see it in use, but you see a little cylinder.
It's definitely
going
moving up and down. So
it's used, but
it's doing something.
We don't. It's a penis pump or something. Thank God we don't zoom in on it because but it was like wow, that took this to a place I was not expecting and was. I was
just like, oh, I'm watching some dystopian sci. Oh, okay.
Okay.
That's different.
The boobs I like. Thinking about Robert Duvall jerking off, not so much. But then he's going back and forth between that and watching the robots beat up some dude. So it's like he's got some real kind of kinky stuff because he's trying to feel emotions, right? Because you're not supposed to. And maybe it's kind of like, Data trying to make himself feel things. Yeah, when he chokes out that Borg and he's like, I'm trying to feel things. And so I watched some porn and then I watched some violence and I watched some things that were sad. But yeah, they have alien variety shows because there's two guys like doing like the alien laugh-in version. Like, I can't laugh. They would tell jokes that had no punchline and then there would be a laugh track. So yeah, very, very much so. But oh my God. But yeah, Duvall is just absolutely losing it. His roommate is a woman.
L-U-H or La. And she even calls him Thex instead of THX, which is interesting. I thought it was not many people use like some sort of phonetic version of their names in this film. Right. Those two are the only ones who do that. And so it's just an interesting moment where it's like, here, these people actually have some semblance of individuality and personality.
And it doesn't take long to go by and they have a lot of like, we're starting to transition into like a sex scene between the two of them. You see her topless as well, which I thought was like, there was nothing even almost quasi remotely sexual about anything in Star Wars outside of the holiday special, which doesn't count. And then the green dancer in Jabba's palace, who you could, when I was 7 years old, I'm like, oh, if she falls on the thing, you can see her boobs. And that was, as a 7-year-old, that was very interesting to me. But this is full blown nudity. And later on, in more than one sex scene, you see him from a distance, from a backside to see his butt. I just thought that's just not very George Lucas. But again, and maybe Coppola was talking him into putting all the naughty bits in there. I have no idea.
Well, it was also coming right off of the 60s. He was right out of college. So different sensibilities, I suppose. Right.
Exactly. Duvall said, he says to his girlfriend, hey, nobody can see us. But then you go to a room that looks like an amphitheater where people are watching them. And and I feel like this was played for laughs. They pull it back to a point where you see just a wide shot of people and you hear what sounds like a ping pong match going back and forth and them just looking back and forth. Was that to infer like that's when they were actually having intercourse and people are like, dude, because they're moving their heads back and forth. I'm like, what is he doing?
Maybe. I don't know. It did feel like they were just kind of like watching it dispassionately, like, oh, this is a thing. Yeah. Oh
my God. I wrote sedation as reverse Viagra before there was Viagra. So you get sedated and then you function sexually different, I guess. But this is when we meet. So he comes home one day and his new neighbor is the Blofeld guy, Donald Pleasance, who later also appeared in the Halloween horror franchise later in the 70s. And he says, I'm your new neighbor. And he's just super fucking creepy and just very sus, like, what are you doing here? Yeah, and we get and Robert Duvall's fighting back. He says, "You can't be here. You're in violation. You're in violation."
Like at some point during right in between here, where there was an accident at the construction lab,
right?
And apparently that guy's roommate gets blown up or something.
Oh, that's right. That really happened.
That's what it seems to happen. And then he hacks into the computer system to get roommate assignments changed so that he gets Robert Duvall as his roommate. He's like, I think that you're a good person. I like you. And it's like, hey, we'll be good for each other. There's very creepy stuff, and he's just like,
please don't.
He's like, no, I don't want to do that because he's got a relationship with his current roommate, even though they're not supposed to.
He's got a sexy thing going on. Yeah, why would I mess with that?
And so he's just like, he's hacked into the system, and which is apparently a major violation. Which
you're in violation.
No shit.
Right, exactly.
So it's that character is.
Yeah, I wrote it's kind of like, and these are two movies you may or not be familiar with. They're both kind of, one was a comedy from the 90s and the other was a thriller. It was A Single White Female or The Cable Guy, which was with Jim Carrey. It was just like having a creepy friend who's too India. I noticed. So in the next scene, Duvall he's going to do his punchy card, which if you've ever had a punchy card job, you know what that's like. But as he's walking through this hallway, the lights are glitching in a way that the light kind of jumps off of the. And I thought it kind of felt like, are they in a Matrixy kind of situation? So it kind of gave me a thought, like, is this where they're going to wrap up? He's going to somehow escape, and then he'll be, in a field of pod people or something. So that kind of
thing is they escape twice in this film.
Right. What's great is that if you're at work and you're fucking up and they want to zap you, they can flip a switch and you'll go into like a seizure. So it was like his eyes rolled back in his head. He was like, blah, 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 blah. While you watch this carbon rod, he's working with fall and melt things, and it melted some wires. And so,
the lab was going to blow up again. And it's like, this seems like this was a your fault sort of problem, not him.
Right. So. And so then he gets hauled in front of the magistrate. And I love the legal process. The people are arguing, but they're kind of arguing with each other very perfunctory. They just don't care.
Yeah, it's very perfunctory. It's almost like they're reading out of a script.
Yes. No, my client must go free. Line. Like they don't know what they're supposed to be saying. And so, the verdict is he's arrested for not taking his drugs. And then the androids, ironically, which he builds, beat the shit out of him. So, he does not get sentenced to death, but life imprisonment, which kind of sucks. And then we get into this big string.
Conditioning, I think is what they call
we get into this big string of numbers because I wrote too many numbers. 404, 404, 404. It was freaking me out. But yes, they're force feeding him drugs, and it's where they get a close up of his mouth. I didn't realize he had he's a weird crooked tooth. I'm like, well, he's a young guy. Need to get some dental work or something. And they can also make people breakdance by punching in codes, which I think that's pretty cool. Because there's two guys who are like, hey, I wonder what this one does. But all throughout the guards, even the robot guards, talk to each other, and like the dialogue is as stimulating as, remember those two stormtroopers on the Death Star when Kenobi is going to go and flip the switches and talk about the T-16?
It's exactly the audio filter that they use for some of that too.
Exactly. Really, they're like, what do you think's going on? Must be another drill. Yeah, it's like this. Exactly.
I think one of the guys who did the robots did some of the stormtrooper voices because he sounded exactly the same.
Could be the same dude. So he ends up getting put together with his girlfriend with love again, and I wrote, I'm sure it's for kindness and not at all that they're setting it up, and she's pregnant. She says, hold me. I wrote, like you did on Naboo. And again, a very weird odd sex scene where they're doing it with their socks on, which is a big no-no. I don't know. I don't might go on record as saying that, but I just think it's really weird. And then the cops come in with their zap rods. They're wearing leather outfits. It's really kind of autoerotic, and they're zapping him and they're wearing the big Star Wars boots too, the ones that you see all the Imperial officers wearing, and they're
riding boots.
Yeah, they're wrestling with him, and it's just there's a lot of weird shit going on, and he gets put in this kind of quasi confinement area. There's a bunch of people there. They're fighting.
And one of the old creepers shows up.
One of the old dudes I saw speaking there. He was a Star Trek guy of some kind. Was he one of the Organians? I thought he looked very familiar.
Oh, the old dude. Yeah, I think he was one of the Organians.
Yeah, there we go. I do love how you can push the robots over and they like break almost immediately. So I'm like, oh, they're like battle droids. So there's just so much Star Wars in this.
Makes so much sense.
And one of the people that gets plugged in with them is called a shell dweller, and it's a diminutive person with long hair and scraggly facial hair. I thought, well, maybe this is what an Ewok looks like when you take the robe off. Don't you remember that Pele said that they were they were very furry. So Duvall gets a crew together. Oh, Blofeld shows up as well. He gets a crew together. Blofeld's going to leave it, and they're going to escape. And I absolutely love this escape sequence. This is the most money-saving escape sequence in the history of cinema. They're walking back and forth in a white room, wearing white clothes, but because they're going back and forth and nothing else changes, they're conveying the movement of walking around with no green screen. I said, is this brilliant? I kind of think it's brilliant. You know what I mean? They run into the first person of color I feel like we see in this movie, who in the credits was called Black Man. So based on that, the captions was called Black Man, and probably also in the credits. He identifies himself as a hologram. Did we get to the bottom of what exactly that meant?
Mm-mm.
If he was, because
I was kind of waiting for an explanation there, and
he was eating because as they're walking, Blofeld's like carrying a bunch of like like little loaves of bread or like donuts or something.
It seemed like there was something along the lines of like, I'm a hologram, but it almost sounded like he had created a body for himself, and so now was in
Very
a physical
weird.
body. It was like that was the sense that I got from things that he said. I didn't write down exactly what he said, but there's a line when he and THX are in like when they're hiding in one of those rooms after they lose
Right.
what's his face.
Yeah. Blofeld. Yeah. He goes off on his own way.
After they lose him, well, he literally gets lost in a crowd.
Right. And he's riding on a tram by himself. Yeah. Because
So after they lose him, there's a moment where they're talking, and it seems very much like he acquired a body somehow, because clearly he still interacts as if he is physical.
Right.
So either that or what he meant by I'm a hologram, meaning I am one of the actors who you see on those hologram programs all the time.
Oh, there you go.
That's the other option.
I play one on TV.
So I think that's the more likely explanation.
Right.
Since mine is a little bit more too Star Trek-y in terms of how minds move. So
right.
I think it's more likely that he's like, it's kind of the I'm an actor.
Right.
Sort of thing.
I'm not a gynecologist, but I play one in my tool shed. Oh, okay. We didn't go that far. Yeah. They end up in another. So they're down in the guts of whatever it is they live in, and they're a room with a bunch of fetuses in a jar or something. And at some point, it gets dropped. Yeah, like I said, Blofeld's riding on a tram, and then he's hiding in a server farm where these robots are chasing him. He also finds what the backdrop is for the therapy confessional booth, and that's why I thought, well, it looks like Genghis Khan or somebody. But you're right; it's very tight in the booth. But the wider shot of it, it looks like it looks like some historical figure who looks like Genghis Khan.
It looks to me like it's a Greek icon of Jesus.
Right, exactly. Now this is where I get lost. So he's in a room. I didn't also figure out where he picked up the ear tag, which was the poster of the show. But he's wearing it at this point.
They got that because there was one point where they found a morgue.
Oh, okay.
They pretended to be dead because someone came through, and then she was tagging the bodies. And she tagged the hologram guy, and he didn't react. And then she tagged THX, and he like flipped out.
Oh, geez, how the hell did I miss that? Whoops. Whoops. So yeah, now this is where I get a little confused. They're in the fetus room, or they're looking at pictures through of the fetus room.
They're on a computer. They're in a computer room, and they're looking up stuff, and then they start trying to look for people.
Yeah.
And so he tries to find La.
She's
dead.
She's dead. Okay, I got that. And they pulled her fetus out, and it's in a jar.
Yep. So her name has been transferred to this kid who is being grown in a vat, a la episode 2. So
whoa, yeah. So I'm like, that kind of sucks. They're just like, well, we took you off, killed you, but yeah, they yanked your baby, and that's very science fictiony, but it's creepy and it's what you expected. Blofeld ends up on a bench somewhere where these kids come around. He totally looks like a pedo talking to him just because he's a creepy looking guy, but he's helping them out because they wear little like chemical packs that they wear on their arm, and one of them got unplugged, so he's talking to these kids. I was trying to figure out why there are some randos in the crowd of everybody wearing white that are in pink, and it reminded me of Homer Simpson having the pink shirt in that one episode of Simpsons because Bart threw his red hat in the laundry, and that's when they figure out he's crazy, gets locked up with Michael Jackson. It was an early episode of the show. But that's just what it made me think of. Now it's car chase time. So Duvall and Black Man they steal
don't get in the same car. There's 2 seats, and they get into 2 separate cars, and clearly neither of them can drive. Yeah,
I was going to say, I'd like to put my feet up. That was Mr. Burns' line to Smithers. He said, sir, there's 2 seats. I'd like to put my feet up, which you don't do when you're driving. Mm-hmm. But they put on headsets, and I'm like, this kind of feels like they're like in an X-Wing or whatever. But Duvall takes off. The black man is still fiddling with his car. He can't get it started. But as Duvall starts to get chased, he's chased by 2 guys on motorcycles. They sound exactly like the speeder bikes. They're making the same noise from Return of the Jedi.
Very, very similar sound.
Yeah. So the black dude he's fumbling with his thing. He finally gets it started, and then he crashes into a pole. And then when I keep calling them the leather cops come down and they crack it open, he's gone. So did he hologram out? Did he just peace out?
Well, they did make it a rather big explosion, so I guess the idea is that cop bots look in and like, well, he dead. I'm moving on.
Yeah, I don't really need to stick my arm in there. They filmed all this, I'm assuming, on a closed tube or huge expressway somewhere in London. That's my vibe, because there's zero traffic. And maybe that's because they shut it down so they could chase him. But we get a long sequence where I was going to say this was the OJ chase before we had an OJ chase, because it's just him and two cops, but he's going 235 miles an hour. That's insane. I get kind of nervous if I go over 80, so I don't think I could drive 235 even if there was no cars around. But he does, when he does, it's an extended sequence. He crashes in some bridges. He spins out, and then his car is dead, and so he has to get out.
Felt very kind of like episode 1 was a callback to that for a second with Anakin.
Right. Yes. Yeah. The pod racing. So he gets out.
Not even that. The Starfighter.
Oh, right.
He overheats and then sits there for a minute.
Yeah, not even a minute. He gets out and he's on foot, and I feel like maybe this is when the director's cut got in the mix, because he gets swarmed by these, what are they? I referred to it, the sheet people or something. What did it call them earlier up? The shell people,
shell dwellers. Yeah,
and they're monkeys, and they look very like shitty early 2000 CGI. I don't know if you picked up on that. I don't know what that looked like in the original film. It was probably looked more believable than this. But he's running. One of the monkeys kind of beating the shit out of him, but he busts loose, and then he gets to literally the longest access tunnel climb. It's like the access tunnel in Star Trek V when Kirk, Spock, and McCoy are on Spock's jet at level 78. But he's climbing, and I love this. So this is all of the background is interspersed with them going, well, the budget for this chase is getting too high. And they get to a point where they say, you've exceeded your budget for this chase. You got to wrap it up. And this is my favorite part. So Duvall's still climbing. The leather cops are climbing after him, and they're like, we have to go. So this is your last chance to come back with us. And please come back. And I'm like, really? He's done all of this shit to get away from them. And they really think he's going to, we're trying to help you, dude. But yeah, I absolutely love that his chase was over budget. And the leather cops are like, it's your last chance to come back. Brr, brr, brr. And he keeps climbing. We cut to an external shot. We're outside. We are seeing a hazy close-up shot of a sunset, kind of reminded me of maybe the American desert, something like that. And you see the fuzzy figure of Duvall kind of rise from above. He's obviously flipped a hatch, and he's up there, and he crawls out, and the credits roll. That's our film.
Yeah, we get no context as to what he's escaping into.
Right, exactly. So I don't know if the purpose was that is to create the vibe for a sequel, if this was maybe an early instance of the whole concept of start your engines. We made this movie so that you get excited for a sequel. That's never going to happen. So before we
kind of like a film where it's like, here's kind of the end. It's meant to be kind of a, you don't know how it ends, to get you to think about and guess about. It felt like this was one more leaning towards the artsy side rather than we want a sequel. So
artsy and fartsy.
Yeah.
All right. So let's do a rating, and then we'll circle back and kind of talk about messages and meetings. So I got to be honest with you. This was a 50% for me. I gave this a 5 out of 10. I could probably go lower. But I get the message, it's like, the more automation creeps in, the more those things take over our lives. That's bad. I get it. But I feel like their attempt to portray a future with fuzzy black and white screens and weird holograms and no, people can't have sexuality. I feel like it's aged so poorly. Maybe the message of it gets lost a little bit. Like, you look at something even older than that, and I hate to keep going back to Star Trek, but you look at TOS, and while some parts of that might be a little faded, the sets or whatever, and I mean, the visuals have been redone over the years, a lot of the messages really hold true. Private Little War, the Errand of Mercy with the Klingons being the Russians, and the Vietnam allegory, and the one I just mentioned, so on and so forth. I mean, I just don't feel like there's a good maintained kind of message for this one that I feel like, this is evergreen. It really lasts.
I would tend to agree that this particular message, while it's still relevant, it's not relevant in the same way. I think. So mostly because the technology's changed so much that if our lives were to become heavily automated, it would look quite a bit different.
Right.
If only because there's a lot more, invasive procedures that can be done now, and
Right.
invasive technologies
Yeah.
that can monitor you a lot more closely than just simply a camera in the medicine cabinet.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, telling you which drugs to take.
yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. It's just, and again, is this a product of its time? This was Lucas's first passion project from the time he was a student. So it was written from that perspective. I think, if you look at kind of meanings and messages and you try to look at, so let me, my big thoughts were, is there anything, we've talked about our dislikes and things that made us scratch our head. Anything in this that really stands out to you that you thought, okay, that's pretty interesting or cool or a good concept?
I thought that, obviously I was watching the 2004 remaster with all the updated special effects, but I liked his ideas of like I like the visual. Lucas does really, really good visuals.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like the automation line where they're creating the cop bots, that was actually quite interesting.
Right.
With how the controls worked, and then how you had like these manipulator arms that did all the stuff for them. Like I liked the visuals in the film. I liked his use of all of his technology stuff with the control rooms and the buttons and everything. I thought the automated cops were kind of an interesting thing that were definite. It was definitely a bit ahead of its time, I think, because other than like the quick bit of like mechanical people in Metropolis way back when, and then like a few references to androids in Star Trek the original series, and outside of like things like Robbie the Robot or stuff where it's very clearly a robot.
Right.
This was something that was interesting where it's like, oh, here's a machine that can think.
Right. Androidish, yeah.
Artificial intelligence, that is right. An artificial person that is stronger than a human being and can control them. So that was an interesting thing. I also thought it was mildly hilarious. This is what my brain kept going back to. It was mildly hilarious that you had dudes with silver face wearing biker cop uniforms that then gets returned to in 1991 in
right.
Terminator.
Right. Yeah.
I just thought that was hysterical. Like complete coincidence.
Right. But... And in between the Village People. YMCA. Oh my gosh. Yeah. You're right. I like he is such a visual storyteller,
yep.
Which is what gave us obviously in this, where this is going to be a 5-part series for us where we have this, we're going to talk about his second directed film. And then we're going to do the original Star Wars again. And as a continuation of that, we will complete talking about the trilogy. We're going to have guests on for those last 3, just because I think it's good. I think that's the good start to talking about the other things that we want to talk about. And then as new episodes, new content comes on, that's going to become a bigger focus of what we talk about. But yeah, I liked it. But again, yeah, there was a lot of stuff kind of head scratching about this. The sexuality stuff is weird because it's just not how I think. And we see a lot of sexuality in the next film that we're going to talk about because of the setting and everything. But it's not graphic. There's not graphic nudity.
I think perhaps the difference. This just randomly occurred to me. I think perhaps the difference is that this one, so THX and the next film were made for an adult audience,
right,
or a teenage audience for the next one, maybe.
Okay.
Whereas Star Wars, he very clearly stated was not.
Right.
And so he kept a lot of that stuff out of it. I don't think that I don't know that Luke, because we don't see a ton of sexuality in, like, say, the Indiana Jones films either. There's a little bit, but not a lot. But those films, which are written by Lucas, are geared towards adults, and so I think that that's why we have this here. Is that this film in particular is very clearly an adult film because it's very clearly made to help to get you to think about our relationship to technology and our relationship to the state.
Right.
So I think that's why that's there. It's still weird and it feels a bit out of place.
Right.
But I think that's why it's here.
Yeah.
Or at least there's a justification why it's here instead of why it's not in the others.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I think the legacy of the brand is to this is to strengthen what Lucas's focus is, obviously, for the OT, which is the fight against the state, oppression, fascism, and complete control, which is what the Empire represents. So yeah, this was an interesting start to his vision. Yeah, and I would be curious. And again, anybody who's listening to this, who is maybe you're an older listener, maybe you're a younger person who somehow discovered this film and it speaks to you in a way that Peter and I are not really tracking. We would love to hear from you, and we would love to hear from anybody who's listening who has thoughts on our format and kind of how we're charting our course here. Because again, Peter and I are kind of running this from the playbook of what we're comfortable with, because Peter and I have been making shows together for almost 5 years. And we've kind of done things in a very similar format to the way we do things over on Code 47. But we're excited to let people know that liking Star Wars and liking Star Trek are two totally different things. And most people I know who are peers that I respect, both in the podcasting community and then just in the world in general, enjoy them both because they're so different. But we enjoy them because they speak to different parts of us. So, Peter, I didn't get your rating for the movie. Where would you put it out of 10?
I would probably put it, in terms of like how I enjoyed it, probably more at a 6.
Okay.
I liked what it was attempting to do, but there was it felt a bit clunky. Which is just par for the course for films from that particular time when they're trying to be heady. That's just what happens. And I don't like hanging endings. I know that like they're meant to help you think about stuff. I don't like unresolved endings. Like there's films that like, oh, this is an amazing film, you should really see it, and then I watch it and it's like it ends like crap. I don't like that.
It goes nowhere. Or it goes somewhere that you don't know what somewhere is.
Yeah, this doesn't end like crap in the same way. Like it has an ending, but there's so many unresolved questions, and I'm like,
right.
I wasn't satisfied at the end of the film.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. Well, cool. Well, that's the show. So I know I'm dancing around all the suspense, but it's very easy for you to look up and know that George Lucas's second film is 1973's American Graffiti, a great film that I've loved for a very long time. Peter, you were seeing it for the first time, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll be able to get your thoughts on that when we're back in 2 weeks. But thanks for tuning in to this new version of the Holocron Chronicles. We hope you enjoyed it. We're very interested in feedback from people who are listening. So you can reach us in the following ways. Peter, where do people find you out there?
You can find me around the webs at Petrus Aquinas on various platforms. You can also find me on our Discord. That's usually where I'm the most active. And you can also find me over on ELH's Twitch channel doing some role-playing games, and behind the scenes, which I'm actually doing this week, is editing stuff for Starship Excelsior.
Very nice. I like it. And I can be found the places I usually am. My big three for the social medias are Blue Sky, Threads, and Instagram. I am at the C3, TheCeeThree. But much like Peter, I love our Secret Friends Unite Discord. It's a fun, safe place to have lots of pop culture, geek-themed discussion, lots of different channels, options, places to post, news to read, things of that nature. So we would love to see you up over there. But with that, I will bid you adieu. I guess we're going to, I guess we'll forego the traditional song that I always sang because that's a little weird unless, unless Mark, the ghost of Mark appears and tees me up. But we'll simply say that sharing is caring, and to keep on trucking.
May the force be with you.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.